Hello, everyone, and welcome to a wonderful new episode of the StudioMEcast. I am your host, and today we have another special guest. This is Mary Ann McBride Tackett, who's the Director of Film Education at WQED. And I'm just really excited to be talking with you today, so thanks a lot for being on the podcast. How's it going?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
I want to talk with you a bit about film education. That's you're the head of that at WQED. And also, you went to film school at Point Park University, and sometimes I see people ask or wonder about if they should go to film school or a film program because all of their favorite filmmakers that they think are, didn't go to film school or something. I went to film school. I have my opinions about it. But I guess starting with just a personal experience, what did you get out of your film education?
Sure, yeah. So I went to Point Park. I was in the first graduating class of their cinema program, which was a very interesting experience. I found myself in a similar experience in many different places and times in life since then, where I am in the new department, in a new position that has just been created. So in the ways outside of the obvious like education and instruction that I received in film, that aspect of it, which I know is very specific to my experience, ended up being like incredibly helpful as I like have moved my way through my career so far. Just having that kind of like flexibility and openness to things changing, because the program was really like forming and figuring out what it was while we were there, and there was a lot of like checking in with us and asking our thoughts and opinions on things as they were like figuring it out. So that was cool, although that's, like I said, specific and not really helpful for anybody else. But I studied directing and screenwriting specifically, and I was really happy to be a part of a program that was really focused on hands-on production, as opposed to like a film theory major. So I guess the biggest thing that I learned was working collaboratively with people. I always I think when I was younger, sort of thought that this was I had that kind of auteur mentality that I think we, especially in our generation, were sort of raised with. I know we like mentioned Tim Burton a bit ago, and like that's kind of like that's what you think of when you're a kid, and you're like, I'm going to be that person that does all the things, and that's going to be my movie. And then so one of the biggest things that you learn, I think, going to school is just how many people it takes to make a film, and that you can still make one on your own. Like it's not like a black and white scenario. There's a lot of different ways to make media in general. So that was really helpful. I think that was my biggest takeaway, and just learning how to not only work with other people, but maintain those connections and leverage those connections. I still talk with people that I went to school with. They still pop up in my life. I just met up with a friend who has been in LA for years and does special effects for all of the Star Wars shows.
Oh, cool.
So cool. And so cool because I knew like how big of a fan he was when we were in college. But you get to maintain those relationships, and they come up, and you get to help each other as you kind of get your bearings in your own careers. And I had him come and speak to our students in our program, and we'll probably have him talk again at some point. So, I guess that was a very long-winded kind of roundabout, and I don't know if that answered your question. It
does, yeah. Okay. Learning to collaborate with others and realizing that there's more to filmmaking than just being an auteur. Like even with Tim Burton stuff, where it's a lot of people, I think, still don't realize that he didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right, I love sharing that fact.
Yeah, it's like, and the title was changed right before its release to Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is interesting. But clearly that film is his imagination and vision and style and everything, but there's still other people involved to make the films happen, and I think it's good it's better. I think for me, it's more entertaining when a film does have a clear artistic voice behind it,
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of people who want to make movies who maybe do have that voice, and maybe they think they do and don't. Doesn't really matter. They're not getting them done, and it's because they don't have people, resources, opportunity, whatever it is, to get that film accomplished. But that's a really valuable lesson to have. And then, of course, there's technical aspects that you learn. I think a lot of people, like you hear about people who who haven't gone to film school and made it. And I think that kind of speaks also to your experience of being a part of a new film program, which is like when you were the first year at Point Park, because there's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah, right.
And no, like you might see different trends of people, but just because someone didn't go to film school, like, oh, this filmmaker didn't go to film school and this one didn't go to film school, but that doesn't mean they both did the same thing.
Right.
Either.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up because 2 nights ago, I was watching Clerks. Just happened to come on.
Confession, I just watched that for the first time.
What?
I know. I can't. I'm sorry. I started watching it before and then I was distracted or something. Like 2 weeks ago, I watched it for the first time.
Well,
which is weird because I say I'm a Kevin Smith fan. So yeah.
Yeah, you should cut this out just to preserve your your reputation.
I have a reputation.
You don't want that getting out there. But I was watching a movie. My husband and I watched a movie, and then he fell asleep, and then Clerks just happened to come on, and so and then Clerks 2 came on twice. I watched that twice because I was just up, but yeah, I've seen it a million times. But we started talking about it because he eventually woke up and was like, "Oh, you're watching Clerks," and so we started talking about the film school versus no film school, and how that was a big thing that was attached to Kevin Smith because he didn't go to film school. That was he was all you don't need film school, and kind of advocated for that pathway. And we started talking about it, and he was like, "Do you regret going to school for that?" And I'm like, "No, because I feel like those experiences set me up for everything that was to come." And so, I've told my kids as they are in school currently, my oldest is actually at Point Park, was the first legacy student of the cinema program. So I used to bring her to class occasionally when we needed a small child to act in something. I would go check her out of daycare around the corner and bring her to school. And so all the professors knew her, all of my classmates knew her, and now she's returned to that school.
That's so cool.
It's so crazy.
That's
it's wild.
awesome.
Yeah, but
wow.
She's still in school. My youngest is a sophomore in high school, and especially my youngest because they are less excited about, although they're pretty happy now that they're in high school, but they've always been less inclined to follow a formal education. They've made a point to tell me they do not want to go to college. That's not something that they want to pursue. But I always tell them, you're in school to learn how to learn more than you are to learn the facts that are being taught to you. So, yeah, I learned how to use a camera, and I learned how to do 3-point lighting, and I learned how to edit, and I learned all of those things that are all now totally irrelevant because all of that technology has evolved. And not totally irrelevant. I mean, the principles are all the same, but, that's not something, that was really of particular interest to me. I definitely wanted to go to a school that had hands-on production as part of the educational experience. That was never really my interest. I've never been tech-minded or any of the anything to do with let me just say, I hate lighting. I'm just gonna straight up be I hate lighting.
You hate doing it, or
I hate everything about it. Really?
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, no, I like the outcome. I like to watch it, and I appreciate good lighting, but it's just something that's just never appealed to me. And just earlier today, as my program manager, Ian, and I were presenting at a conference, and he was talking about how students can kind of be put into one of two buckets. And obviously there's a lot of nuances for each individual student, but either they're artistic or an engineer. Like they kind of fall into one of those two camps. Like either they're the person that comes in with like all of the ideas, they want to make all the creative choices and like kind of like see the vision of things. And then there's the students that come to us that just want to put their hands on the camera. They want to learn how it works. They want to know like all of the like everything to do with the technology. And I was not that one. I was definitely the former. So, so that was just something that I appreciated learning it, but it wasn't something that I was there to collect that knowledge because I wanted to go and implement it in my career at some point. That was never really the plan.
Yeah, and that also explains why you also were studying screenwriting as well. So being very much on the artistic story side.
Yeah, and that was kind of what got me. And I knew I wanted to go to school for film by the time I was in 6th grade. Like in 6th grade, they make you like sit down and like do the little test and tell you that you want to be a teacher or a doctor or whatever, you know. And I was like, this is dumb. I know I want
Those things are never wrong.
Yeah, right? I know. The best, most accurate way. But I knew, like, before I took the test, I was like, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to tell stories. I love the, artistic aspect of it, and I am myself not in any way artistic. Like, I can't draw a stick figure.
Oh, I see.
In fact, I even, convinced my teacher in college to let me do my storyboards with a camera and stills so that
so more like a previs kind of a all right, well, if it works, it works, you know.
And I got away with it, so that was sweet. So that I knew that I couldn't paint or draw or sculpt or do anything like that, and I also really like writing. I was always told in high school that I should be a writer. All my English teachers told me that. And I like the storytelling aspect of it, and I also really love music, and music is a really big part of my passions. And
are you a musician?
I am a violinist.
Oh, excellent.
So I was actually the head of our orchestra in high school. I was the first chair concert mistress.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you still play?
Not really. Not as much as I should. Although my husband last Christmas did get me an electric violin, which I had wanted forever.
Wow.
And then I've not touched it all since, and I feel very guilty about it. But one day I will when I have time. But
I've had a couple of gifts like that. It's like, oh man, I can't wait.
It's a very expensive toy sitting in the closet that I just haven't had a chance to really dive into yet. But I mean, so yeah, I played violin, and I also sang. I was in the choir. I did a lot of musicals, and a lot of acting through high school, middle school, and high school. But I mean, beyond that, it's just I've always had a really deep appreciation for music, and film was one of those things that just brought everything together. Brought the visual aspect, the storytelling, music, all of the things just in one place. And so I loved that. I wanted to do everything. And I also am so interested in so many different things. It's I'm not a doctor, I play one on TV. So there's just so many, you can be anything. You can be anywhere. You can immerse yourself in any world and totally dive into it. And even if it's nonfiction or fiction, you can really sink your teeth into this whole life temporarily and then be able to totally shift gears and do something completely different. And I liked that aspect too.
That definitely was a big appeal for me, and still is. I wanted to do so many different things when I was a little kid. I pretty sure the first thing I wanted to be was a pilot, and I would love to get a pilot's license someday. Flying is a lot of fun. And then I wanted to be an engineer, a submarine captain, a Texas Ranger, all kinds of things. And somewhere down the line, there's a whole lot of reasons why I became a filmmaker, but one of the things that did happen was I thought, man, I could kind of, be a part of a lot of these things in some way. Maybe I'll make a war movie where I get to tour a submarine.
Right. Exactly.
Or film on one, or pretend to make one, or whatever, Now I want to get more into this, because sometimes we'll get to some more film education in a bit, but I want to talk with you about you being an artist and what really gets you going artistically with things. So, are the kinds of films you like watching, are they similar to the types of films that you want to make? and like to make and all?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that those things are similar. Well, I don't know. Actually, I feel like the the pathways that each one of those kind of ways of thinking, they're starting to converge as I get older, which is interesting. Yeah. So, like when I was growing up, Tim Burton was my favorite filmmaker, and it was like, that's what I want to do. That's so cool. And then I found out that was, he was greatly influenced from German Expressionism, and we got into that in college, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I really loved that type of storytelling, and I really do still have a really deep appreciation and love for fantasy and sci-fi. I grew up on 80s sci-fi, Labyrinth, Neverending Story. Those are all key.
Dark Crystal.
Yeah, Dark Crystal. Yeah. It wasn't one of my primary. I didn't see that till I was a little bit older. But just to make you feel better about your lack of seeing Clerks until recently. But yeah, that kind of, those types of stories were really interesting to me because it was this way to talk about really complicated and sometimes touchy or dark subjects through metaphors, and in a way that could be access to kids, to children and younger people, and kind of sort of leveled the playing field about a lot of different content and conversation. And I always thought that was really interesting because the other kind of aspect of filmmaking that made me know I wanted to do it and spend my life in that world is that I felt I remember having this, which I know sounds crazy as a 11, 12-year-old kid, but I remember having this thought of what do I want to do with my life? First of all, how am I supposed to know that? I'm 11. And I thought that was ridiculous that we were supposed to know that then. But also, the question was what do I want to do with my life? Well, why are we here? And so that should inform how I spend my time here, on Earth. And I feel like we're here to figure out why we're here, kind of. And that's something that storytelling is designed to do. It's designed for you to be able to explore topics and have conversations and talk about, the meaning of life and all of that kind of bigger picture stuff, and a way to examine it and break it into pieces and really look at it from different facets. And that's what I was well, that's what I feel like I want to do. Nothing against any other career choices, but I remember as a kid thinking yeah, it'd be cool to be a doctor, but we're all gonna die, so well, that's great, but where's that gonna get us in the end? We all, and these are very dark thoughts. It's a young kid,
but they're I think they're thoughts that more kids have than a lot of people who are older remember.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's, I thought about stuff like that. I still do.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think, and I wouldn't say, oh, every kid thinks about that, because I know that's not true. Because I knew other kids, and I'd ask them about stuff, and they were thinking about something else.
Yeah.
And I think the world probably needs whatever they were thinking about too.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Let's kind of narrow it down a bit. Is there a genre that you find particularly appealing for your work?
So most of my focus now has been really in, it's been a really long journey to come back to the thing that my professor told us on day one of our screenwriting 1 class, which is, write what you know. It's the thing that everybody says, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of rebellion in my way of thinking that that's not totally true though, I'm gonna write whatever the hell I want to write. But now I'm an adult and I've had a lot of life experience, so to be fair, I also have more to choose from now because I know more than I did. But now I'm oh yeah, no, that really does yeah, I get it now. And it's not it's such a simple idea that's really more complex once you kind of get it. And and I feel like I kind of get it now. So a lot of my writing has been centered kind of around like being a mother and what that looks like in this day and age, and my experiences as a woman. And I've had 5 kids. So I've been a surrogate 3 times, and I'm also a birth doula. So all of that talk about like,
can you define that
yeah,
for the people back
yeah,
home?
for the people, yeah.
Yes.
So the way I like to describe it is because a lot of times people will confuse it doula with a midwife, or think that they're the same thing. I am not a midwife. There's a lot of education and training that goes into being a certified midwife, and so much props to the midwives out there. They've delivered a lot of babies for me personally and for clients. But I like to tell people that like a midwife deals with like the waist down, and a doula is the waist up. So like I don't really do anything below the waist. It's not my territory, but everything like up in the northern region of like helping the woman mentally, emotionally, and physically to some degree, like managing their pain through their labor is something that a doula does. And we're there to be an advocate for the birthing mother. We're also there to be a support for the partner, the birthing partner. There's a lot of dads that, you know, the like kind of cliche of the dad like hitting the floor and passing out, like that does happen. And most of the time it happens because the dad is on his feet for like 24 hours and doesn't stop to eat or go to the bathroom or do anything because he's so terrified to leave his partner. And so like a doula is there to support him too and give him some space and make sure he's taking care of himself. And so we're really there to just like be an advocate, be a support, provide education and understanding. It's a crazy time when you're in labor, and so it's really difficult to make decisions, to process information that is being hurled at you sometimes, especially in like more dire situations. And so a doula is there to like be that in between, speak up for the mother, know ahead of time. You meet with the birthing mother and know like what their birth vision is and what they want to have happen, so you can be an advocate for them. And not to like deviate too much, because I know this is a long-winded answer to your question.
Real quick, this is a podcast. The worst thing that can happen is you don't talk enough. So
okay, well,
don't even worry about it.
That's not a problem. But yeah, so I lost my train of thought.
You said you were going to deviate. From doula being an advocate, birth vision, sometimes helping the birth partner with that. So that you can help facilitate the experience.
Thank you very much. You got it. So one thing that unfortunately I've been a witness to is the difference in care that some mothers receive, whether it's because of their socioeconomic background, their race, and that is also something that I feel very strongly about advocating for, making sure that women are receiving equal and, and thorough care and the care that they all deserve. Everybody deserves the same type of care, and there really are a lot of like gaps in that in the birthing community and in that industry. So, so yeah, I guess like to come full circle, a lot of my writing ends up getting rooted in like women, their experiences, their rights, their being a mother or just being a woman. And I guess part of my like comment earlier about those two things, what I'm interested in and what I'm interested in creating, have come together because there's more content like that now than I've ever seen before, which is really exciting and something that's been super inspirational. And I went a very, very long time without writing anything. And in light of stuff that I've watched over the last couple of years, like amazing content, like Fleabag, amazing.
I love that show.
So good.
Allie and I, my wife, we... that show is so great. It's
so
hard
good
to pitch to people sometimes.
Yeah.
Because, what's it about? It's like, there's this objectively, like, you wouldn't necessarily want to be around this person. And it just kind of like everything you might start to say about it superficially might be
a turnoff for some people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just, I just tell people, I'm like, look, it's just really good. It's just the writing, the characters, the performance. It's just a really great show.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's really amazing and exciting to see, frankly, to see like men as into it and excited about it. Because I think that's another thing that's really shifted is that a lot of the content that was written about women was specifically for women. And I remember growing up thinking, I don't ever want to write a romantic comedy. I don't ever want to write a chick flick because, frankly, like, fuck those stereotypes. And, like, I was a bit of a rebel, like, growing up, but, like, it really upset me that it felt like if I wanted to be a woman and I wanted to be a filmmaker, then I had to be a specific type of filmmaker. And so for a minute, like, when I was growing up, mostly, like, in my, like, teenage, early 20s, I was like, I want to make the goriest, nastiest horror film, or what can I make that someone would be like, wow, I can't believe a woman directed that. That's the type of thing I want to really do. And now, as I've gotten older, I'm like, actually, I really like the stories that are being told that are about women, that are for women, but not limited in their audience. And Fleabag is great, but actually my favorite example of this, one of my favorite shows ever was Better Things. I don't know if you watched that.
I haven't seen that yet.
As an FX show.
If you put that up there with Fleabag, I mean, I'm sure they're different shows, right? But, like, I'll check it out.
It's Pamela Adlon. It's her show. So for those that don't know, or if you're not familiar, she was the voice of Bobby Hill on King of the Hill.
Oh, all right.
She was also on Louis. So Louis C.K. executive produced that show in the beginning. Then some things happened. His name came off the show. That's all we need to talk about that. But she ended up continuing the show and making it on her own. She was executive producer, wrote, directed, and starred in it. And it was basically autobiographical about her raising her 3 daughters.
Wow.
And being a single mom. And I was a single mom for part of my life, and have 2 daughters. And she has this great, like, irreverent, wry sense of humor, like, way of talking that I totally, like, just felt like she was speaking my language. And I was just like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. I was already, like, brainstorming and, like, sketching out stories before that show came on the air. And now I'm like, well, now it's just going to look like I'm copying it. But hopefully just that I'm paying homage to it because it is so great. And she's amazing. Like, I really, really love and respect her a whole lot. She's, like, on my list of, like, I hope I can meet her before one of us dies.
I hope you do. And something that I'm very outspoken about is when you're writing, I just tell people a lot. I'm not trying to direct this as me giving you advice or anything like that, but something that I tell myself, we'll put it that way, is I try to not worry about my writing reminding me of other stuff I've seen, because the amount of stuff people have gotten away with that should have bugged me, and even I didn't care.
Yeah.
Like Guardians of the Galaxy has a tree person in it.
Right.
Well, I've seen Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And there's tree people in that.
Yeah.
And doesn't bother me a little bit.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, Full Metal Alchemist, Kingdom, and like a billion other things have, and real life China have this theme of this wall, you know?
Yeah,
and like,
right.
Then on the other side, like where Hadrian's Wall, it's like on the other side, there's the barbarians. We got, guard the wall. Like there's so many things that
you're like, oh, it's the same story.
Or like eerily the same.
Yeah.
And it's like my experience with just being a viewer has been, if it's good, no one cares.
Yeah.
Like they might go, oh yeah, that's whatever. It's different and I like it,
I think that's part of it though, is it ups the stakes then, because then it has to be good. It has to be that good. It has to be good enough that you can get away with that.
Otherwise it's just a knockoff.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Like, oh, that was trying to be
it just
like
ripped
this
it
other.
off. Yeah, right. Yeah, which is not unlike the movie that I watched last night.
Yeah?
Yeah, I watched a movie last night. It was on Hulu. It was just like, I just want to watch something that's like creepy, scary or something, because it's that time of year. And so I put on this movie called Sanctuary. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I think I've heard of it. I definitely haven't seen it though.
Yeah, so it's it has totally blanking on her name now, but she played the daughter in Leftovers, and she's been doing more and more stuff lately. And I really like her a lot, actually. And who's the male lead in it? He's also an actor that I really like watching. But wow, I'm like really blanking on him. But anyways, it was basically Pretty Woman meets Fatal Attraction. Like almost entirely with maybe some like hard candy sprinkled on top. And so it was like, wow, this is just, I mean, down to the she wears a short blonde wig and has this crazy wild like brown curly hair underneath. I'm like, come on, does nobody like see that this is just exactly like
I mean, but
Julia
how
Roberts?
many movies you know this, like people will say, hey, if you can pitch your film by saying, oh, it's like this crossed with this.
Right.
You know,
Right.
or, I mean, I enjoy Rick and Morty, and a lot of the episodes are basically two famous concepts mashed together.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
oh, Jurassic Park and Fantastic Voyage. Put
Right.
them together, it's an amusement park in the body. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
you know, and of course they're falling into parody and satire, of course.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I'm not knocking this as a writing format at
Yeah,
all. It
yeah.
clearly works. I enjoy it. But yeah, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, Simpsons kind of like mastered that. Mastered it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like. I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about, which is I've thought for a long time that the theme of motherhood does not get. And there's a lot of things that I wish there were more movies about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the theme of motherhood and birth and all that is something that I've thought really should be looked at more in cinema beyond, oh, here's the scene where the baby's born with like the crying mom, you know, and like
And the like 2-month-old baby.
yeah.
It's always
Yeah.
my husband's always
Yeah.
like, because I always say when a baby's born, I'm like, that's a fresh baby. And
Mm-hmm.
my husband's always like, how fresh is that baby, do you think? Like, that baby is 2 months old at least.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no, that's a great insight there for people because it's like it can be hard to get a baby, you know,
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
film.
yeah.
As I know, I had a film I did where we didn't. I don't think we even tried to get a real baby. We were just like, not gonna happen. We're
Yeah.
doing things with this character that
Yeah.
it's like it's just a doll and it will be funny.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
But yeah, I've thought, you know, it's that's something that I've thought should be definitely more thoroughly on screen, you know, because it's almost like, I think it was Christopher Hitchens. So Christopher Hitchens was the one who I'm going to paraphrase here. He said something along the lines of, he put all the disclaimers of, oh, I'm generalizing, whatever, all that stuff. And if anyone's interested, look up his quote. But he said something along the lines of, birth for women is a lot like combat for men, or vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've thought about that a lot. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, I think that's also kind of reflective of what film does in a way where it's like when a lot of the time when movies are, and not only, there's good examples, but a lot of the time when movies have like a war movie, they focus on just the battles. You know, in the same way that like, oh, well, there's a woman giving birth. It's like, here, she's just the labor scene, you know.
Yeah.
But then every once in a while, you know, you get a film that goes more into the just
The
goes
nuances.
beyond
and-
that,
yeah,
you know,
right,
like
the whole
just
scope of it.
Yeah, shows a bit more of the before and after. You know?
Yeah, well, and even the
So-
during, I always like crack up when there's a birth scene in a movie or a show because it's always like happens in like 5 minutes, you know.
Yeah, that's the other
It's
thing.
just like, oh, I'm gonna have this baby right now, and here it is, and it's like does happen. It does happen. My first doula client was supposed to be my doula client. She was a friend of mine. I played roller derby for several years, and she was
Cool.
a co-skater, and I was going to be her doula. Yeah, it was her first baby, and she had that baby in like an hour, like maybe like 2 hours. It was crazy. So
That's faster than me.
Yeah.
I came on like an hour and a half or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which
Wow.
was not normal with all my other siblings. Like they took hours.
So were
know.
you the first, or were you further?
Three.
You're the third.
Yeah, third.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's me and my siblings. There's four of us.
Okay.
I was the fastest one.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
and it was
Mhm.
yeah. There's you know
Yeah.
A lot of family details there, but yeah, it was like hour and a half.
Oh yeah. I mean, they do tend to go faster as you go on, and it depends on like when your last baby was before. It's a whole thing. I could have a whole podcast about this alone.
Look, you can. I'm honestly just talk about whatever you think is interesting, because I'm very inside baseball with almost any topic. If you know a lot about something, I love listening to you.
Yeah.
Like
cool.
whatever I can hear from you that I'm not going to immediately just know by osmosis, you know, is like, I get drop fed information and I'm like, yeah, that's the good stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. So yeah, when I was younger, it was basically like, you know, my life was like Juno, and like I was a teen mom. I had my first child when I was 17, not on purpose. But so it was like, man, that's my life. And then it was like, I became a surrogate, and I'm like, baby mama, that's my life. Like, it's just like, you know, all of these things that pop up and you're like, man, that's just very close. I feel like that gets it. And like, that was a movie that like Juno specifically was like, that was a movie that like did a pretty good job and really did explore the like process and the time before. And much like to your example of like, you know, war movies, they only show the battle scenes. That's not like, for people who have served and who have been in wars, it's like that is, you know, a piece of it. But like there's a lot of sitting around and waiting. There's a lot of days that go by and like, you know, where nothing is really happening or changing. And so pregnancy the days after can be like that. There's a lot of like downtime, but even labor, like it is not uncommon for labor to go on for more than a day. And I think my longest labor I've ever attended was 38 hours. And I didn't leave, and I didn't really sleep. And I was there by her side the entire time because that's what I committed to do. My best friend since I was 5, she had her first baby, like a year and a half ago now, and I was her doula, which was amazing. She was, you know, it was her first time, and like she was a little bit older. She like wasn't really planning on having kids, so she was pretty like nervous going into it. And she had a long labor. She was like 34 hours or something like that. It was over 30 for sure. But yeah, there's a lot of that time is just hanging out. Like, not every moment of labor is a woman like, oh my God, like in the throes of like pain and like, you know, and it's unbearable. Like, you're actually totally fine, especially early on, like in between contractions. It's just like, you're just hanging out. Like it's, you know, you watch TV, like in the hospital room. I mean, like, it's not this like huge dramatic thing every time that every movie paints it out to be. So that's something that like, and that can, depending on how they handle that, can like make me feel a certain way about something that I'm watching.
And I think there's like, the one reason why I think this particular topic is, I'm picking on this one in a lot of movies, isn't because they edit out what, you know, it's like, edit out the boring bits or whatever. I get that. The thing that gets me is the number of birth scenes that are just, they run together. Like they are exactly the same. You know, it's like they're the same beat, even the same lines, you know, and just, same angle, same, like everything. Like you could do just a supercut of, you know, birth scenes in movies, and I bet a lot of them you would be like, you know what, I'm not sure if we've started a new one or not. You know?
Yeah, right.
And it's like there's, I don't know, you know, and I get like, you know, hey, it's difficult to film movies, and sometimes you just gotta go back to the basics. But, you know, if you're having someone give birth in a movie, it's probably an important story point, you know, and so maybe do something special with it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, of all the like examples that I can think of, one that did it like fairly well was Knocked Up. Like, credit to Knocked Up. Like, they did a pretty good, like, the whole thing they covered pretty well. There are moments in that where I'm like, yeah, that hits it. That does, like, that's relatable and real. And you want to know how wrong like movies and TV shows get birth scenes. YouTube actual births.
Right.
Because I did that when I was training to become a doula, and I was watching a lot of like home births and all kinds of like and C-sections and all of the things to like educate myself, to be prepared for things, to watch doulas and what they were doing in different birth scenarios. And my husband or my kids would just like come walking through the room like, oh my God. And I'm like, that's how you know this is right. That is totally like, a dramatization that is like way off base. I mean, you can find those real videos out there. They exist, but it's very different from what we watch in the movies.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like just the stuff you're telling me right now, it's clear you've got so many experiences and stories from this, and having like just the most obvious thing is having a film that takes place from the perspective of a doula who like sees the relationship between the parents and everything else and is doing their best to frankly be a guardian angel who's on hand, and I think there's just so much in like intriguing stuff there that is and it's a part of life that it's a role that you don't hear about as much as, like you said yourself, with like everybody has heard of like maybe they don't know the definition, but everybody knows what a midwife is, But I think there's I think it's really cool that as you've gotten older, you've gravitated more toward these topics for your work, and who knows, as more time goes by, you might be like, hey, I want to make a sci-fi this time. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
about motherhood.
That would be great.
Which has been things that I have thought about.
And my favorite, I think, example of a sci-fi that has motherhood as maybe the main theme in it, Aliens.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. That movie is so... That's not just because it's a fun movie. Like, I love that aspect of it.
Yeah,
it's so... Like, every time I watch it, I notice more stuff about that. Like, even if it's the transition from Ripley and then it to the planet, and stuff. It's like, oh, it's like Mother Earth, and just brilliant stuff. I love that movie. Anyway, it's and it's also just a lot of fun.
For sure.
10 out of 10, one of my favorites. But,
that's definitely my favorite genre now as an adult is sci-fi. It's what I really like to read. It's what I really like to watch.
What are you reading right now? I usually ask people that.
Well, let's see. I am reading, I'm a very, very slow reader. Like, it will take me like a year sometimes to get through a book.
Same.
Because I read, typically the only time I get is if I go to bed, and most of the time when I go to bed, I'm tired. And if I have the energy, I read like 5 pages and then fall asleep. So it's slow moving, but I'm reading Tell All right now by Chuck Palahniuk. And but I'm, like 30 pages into that. And then I also picked up, I tend to like have like a fiction and a nonfiction book at any given time. But I also was reading The Storyteller, the Dave Grohl book. A big Dave Grohl fan. And so just like as a human, like I love him. I just think talk about like life experiences. What an interesting like life he's had. He still seems so like humble. I got that book for Christmas like 2 years ago, and I'm finally like reading that too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think authors sometimes I've bounced back and forth in my life on whether like to separate the art from the artist or not.
Just had that conversation like 2 days ago.
Oh yeah, it's it comes up more and more because there's a lot of artists who will fall out of favor from the public, but people still like what they made, and a lot of people just try to separate them from that. And I used to kind of do that from a different perspective. It was less reactionary and just more like, I don't care who you are or what you've done. If you made a movie I like, then I like the movie, and thanks for making it, but I'm here for the film, that's, or book or whatever. But as time has gone by, I've kind of started to hop the other way with that.
Same.
Yeah, same. And now I'm still pretty much an advocate of well, I think where I'm at right now is you don't have to be a role model in order to be an artist.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like my favorite painter is Caravaggio. That guy was a murderer, like, and just a brawler. He's just a violent guy, and but I just love that guy's paintings. And part of knowing what he was going through as much as I can with, the hundreds of years of separation, is, helps me kind of like, I don't know, just appreciate his paintings and whatever. It's the stuff you can spend your whole life talking about, I guess. But
well, yeah, but on that note too, just because it's relevant to what we were talking about earlier, that Danny Elfman has been put on the chopping block for things recently.
No, I'm sad to hear that. I love his. What's he been
My
up?
favorite composer, ever, and like really loved him, and that's why I was talking about it. Like seriously, like yesterday, I was just talking, and my husband was like, separate the artist from the art, and like that same conversation, and then we started talking about Kevin Spacey, and like, I don't want to say specifically what Danny Elfman was found to have done because I don't honestly know, and so I don't want to misspeak.
Well, then I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and
don't want to spread fake news or
of course not.
disinformation, but I did. So I actually do need to look into it, but I've been putting it off because I kind of don't want to know.
Well, it's one of the things that is hard to come to grips with is that, sometimes you might say bad people can do good things, or, people do however people personally want to categorize good, evil, right, wrong, all that. But I think one of my points with art more lately has been if someone has, shall we say, fallen out of favor with the masses or on the chopping block, that usually does not deter me from experiencing their work. And I do tend to resent when people try to put a disclaimer in front of art to be like, hey, by the way, the person who made this was a real tosser. Just remember that. And I'm like, I kind of don't want people to do that. It's I think it's just kind of weird for people to be like, hey, before you look at this painting, just remember all the horrible things that this person did.
Now enjoy it.
And now it's like, because then you're
altering their perception.
Yeah, and the thing that I am just like totally against is like basically any censorship of art. It's like, and when people put a disclaimer at the beginning of something that they didn't make, I kind of look at that as you're changing someone else's art. I'm like, you're adding to the run. It's like, why didn't you put that at the end after I watched it?
Right,
it's like, and if it's so bad, why are you putting it out there to keep making money off of it? It's like, so that's how I feel.
Well, I mean, some of it I think depends on the content too of what it is. As far as like watching specific pieces of art based on the people that were involved, like in that conversation that I just had the other day, and Kevin Spacey got brought up, and my older daughter is like, it sucks because I really do want to watch American Beauty. I never got to watch it, and I don't think I can watch it now because of his character specifically in that movie. And I'm like, that's fair. Like, that is fair. It is unsettling. Like within context now, there's other actors too that have been in roles, and then you find out after the fact something, and then you go back and watch it, and you're like, whoa, like that just it hits different.
And that's the other side of it. It's like I'm not one to say like, oh, you need to watch this other thing or anything like that, because that in itself, it's like, well, the person's actions can affect how you're going to view their work. And if like the Cosby Show is a great, funny, awesome show. And there's a lot of people who can't watch that without thinking about what Bill Cosby did. It's like, well, then, don't watch that one, because the whole point of that is to relax and have a good time. And if it's not doing it, then forget about it. But
right, exactly. But the other thing, too, is that, like, it's giving so much weight and power to individuals in a medium that is so collaborative and
A lot of
involves
other
so many
people
people
on that show, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of other people worked on that show. Tons of other people worked on, movies and things where it's one person that comes out to have like been this terrible human and, and now everybody else's hard work just gets like tossed aside.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're a part of this world and you really think about those things, like that sucks. That part of it, I think, really sucks. And then you're kind of giving that person that had that bad behavior all the more power. Like you're giving them power and censoring yourself to their work. You're just giving more, like, and they should have that taken away, not given to them. So.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even people just need a break from it.
Yeah,
but the thing that I get like a very strong reaction to is when someone else says, hey, you shouldn't watch this because that person's whatever. And I'm like, with all due respect, go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
it's like,
everybody has to make their own decision.
Yeah, so it's, and I've always found that people who do that, there's something fundamentally that's just against my values on all that. It's like, all due respect, my family killed people who did that, right?
Yeah.
In the 40s. So, and I feel exactly the same way about it now. It's like, you burn books, I got a problem with you.
Yeah.
And then if you do, and with new technology, sometimes it's hard to figure out like the equivalent of what that might be with, say, streaming or something. And I think it's something that people should be thinking about a lot, but anyway, getting heavy here.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Taking a turn.
Yeah, but well, I think we've talked a bit about like your film education, your growth as an artist, where you're at right now with stuff, and I think it would be great if we talk a bit more about WQED, the film education you have going on there. And so why don't you just tell us a bit about like what kind of programs are there? And like I know that you've got the spring semester coming up and all that. So why don't you just lay it out for us a bit?
Yeah, sure. So give my pitch. I could do this with my eyes closed, and I did it earlier today. So so we do programming youth through adults. We were our own organization, our own nonprofit called Steeltown Entertainment Project a few years ago that had been around for about 20 years. And then we were acquired by WQED in January of 22. So just about a year and a half or so. And then we rebranded everything. So now what was Steeltown Film Academy is WQED Film Academy. What was formerly Steeltown Indie, which was serving adults in the community, now is branded as WQED Filmmakers. So we are still doing program for youth through adults. Our main bread and butter is our high school program. So, but since we've been at QED, we've been going into lower and lower grades and getting more and more requests for that, which has been
cool.
Wild.
Yeah.
We're working on developing a contest for kindergarten through third grade, which is kind of wild to me.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a storyboarding contest. So I think it's going to be really fun. And we're going to pick winners, and then we're going to have our students in our film program make the winning stories that are storyboarded. So we'll see how that goes.
That sounds so cool.
I know.
I'm so excited.
I know.
About that.
It's pretty. I'm like really warming up to it.
Yeah.
But
wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be really cool. And really fun, I think. We're looking to launch that. Right now we're talking about, I have a meeting actually this week, so it could change by the end of this week, but we're looking at launching it in the spring, and then it'll wrap at the end of the school year. We'll shoot over the summer in our summer semester with our high school students, and then we'll get to air the spots, because these are going to be like 30-second PSA kindness themed, like be the kind kid, that campaign. Anti-bullying, that's kind of the theme of them, and so they're going to be these little 30-second spots that hopefully we'll get to broadcast, but we will also do like a screening event for the kids. And my favorite part of this, was my idea, just to like like toot my own horn a little bit, but is inviting the kids, like the winning students, to set on the day that their project is filmed and let them watch it. And I just think that's going to be so cool. And like, I just like couldn't imagine doing something like that when I was that age. I would think that is really cool. So I hope that they enjoy that part of it, because I think that's going to be really like satisfying and really cool for them. But anyways, that's very specific. Now I'm totally getting off topic. Our high school program is for rising ninth graders through recent high school grads. And students can work through a pathway with us to the point where they eventually are paid content creators, and they're on the payroll at WQED, and they're pitching their own content ideas. And then if we greenlight them, because we put them through a process where they have to pitch and we have to greenlight it, we try to make it replicate real world as much as we can. Then they get to produce those short pieces, and they get branded as the Real Teens, like REEL, Real Teens. That's our web series, and we post it on YouTube. And then we also take that student-made content and submit it to film festivals.
Oh, that's great.
It's so cool.
Nice.
That's like one of my favorite parts of what we do too. So we've had students that have placed in film festivals all over the country. And what's really cool is that occasionally we get to take students to those film festivals. So very cool. We took a student to Newport Beach Film Festival in California a couple years ago. Before that, we took some students to Boston for Boston International Kids Film Festival. And then last year we took some students to New York for the All-American High School Film Festival. So we also do client work. So if you're listening and need some content created, shameless plug, you can hire our teens to do that. And it's super cool when it's like a youth-based organization or something that has to do with youth already, because I always tell people it's like a double whammy for marketing, because they can post and we'll give them BTS, and they can like talk about how kids made this content about kids, which is really cool. We worked with Industrial Arts Workshop last year, so that's a teen program around like artistic welding. Very, very interesting. If you haven't heard of them, check it out. But our students did a bunch of instructional videos where they were filming their students demoing. Like, that's the perfect scenario. So we do create content and we get paid for that. Our students are involved in the budget. They're involved in like the conversations, the pre-production process with the client and figuring out what they want. And like, so there's a lot of getting those soft skills and professional skills. We like to say that even if a kid comes out of our program, they never want to look at a camera for the rest of their lives. And hopefully they come out of it with still having learned some really like valuable life lessons and professional lessons, and can take that with them. And like my program manager, Ian, always likes to joke, then we've at least saved their parents a lot of college tuition. So that's always a win too. But so we do that program 3 times a year. We're in our fall semester right now, but we are currently recruiting for our spring semester. And that begins at the first week of February, runs through the first week of March. So those are each 12 weeks during the school year. And then the summer intensive is half the amount of time, same amount of hours. That's why it's intense. So it's 6 weeks, and we meet with students 4 days a week as opposed to 2 during the school year. And that's our summer session. And then this last year we started doing middle school programming. So we now do Film Academy Light for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And that is like a very mini version of our high school program, just to let students like dip their toe in, see if it's something that they're into. And so it's just a 3-week, 2 hours once a week, and they make a film. So it's pre-production, production, post over the 3 weeks. And then in the summer, we launched a Make a Movie in a Day camp as our like light version for the summer. Because of the schedules, we're like, well, we can't like do like 3 weeks in a row. We're doing high school programming like all day, every day. So what are we going to do? And so we're like, well, let's take those 6 hours and just put them in one day. So now students will be with us for a whole day, and we feed them lunch and everything, and they make a movie in that one day together. So that's our in-house programming. Our high school program, totally available virtual. So you can do virtual Film Academy from anywhere. We ship you a film at home kit. The students get to keep that at the end of the semester. And then we also go into the classroom. So we go into schools, we go into community centers, we provide programming in school, after school. We can supplement a program that exists already in a school. We can create one from the ground up. And then we also do professional development with instructors and teach them how to teach digital media and navigate all of these uncharted territories for a lot of teachers. They're like getting all this technology and don't quite know what to do with it yet. So we can come in and help with that too. So that's our youth stuff. And then under filmmakers, we host an event called Crew Connect that we do once a quarter. That's a networking event for filmmakers in the community. You can sign up and pitch your project, or you can pitch yourself to the room and hopefully make some good connections. We also offer space at WQED. So I have budgeted so many studio days per year that I can gift to filmmakers and not charge them anything for it, where there's ordinarily would be a charge. And then we also have like a conference room, meeting space, places that we can host table reads and casting calls and not charge anything for. So anything we can do to like support our community and our filmmakers. And then we do workshops for adults as well. So we're gearing up now to do an acting workshop that'll happen in a few months. So that's out there. We've done screenwriting. And we're also always looking for workshops to host. So if anybody is out there, perhaps yourself, Peter.
Oh. My ears did perk up a bit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's this?
Yeah. I mean, if you have a topic that you are particularly knowledgeable and well-versed in, are comfortable teaching, then, and you want to design your own course, we can host that for you. So that's both a support for the artist that has that skill as much as it is for the community to make those skills accessible and able to be shared with everybody else.
Well, that's fantastic. I think it all sounds wonderful.
Thanks.
I remember when you and I first met, you gave me a similar pitch, and I was just like, man, I wish I had this when I was in high school. Like, this sounds so wonderful. And it sounds so great to hear that, like, it's getting down to kindergarten now, which is nuts,
crazy.
Yeah. So it's such a great opportunity for people to, whether they're passionate about filmmaking or just curious about it, and the resources there and the faculty you have, it's just it just sounds like you're doing the Lord's work there, and I'm just so happy about it.
In the world of filmmakers, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah. It's our own little slice of heaven. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and you said the magic words, like everybody says that we talk to. Every teaching artist we've ever interviewed always says, I wish I had this when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And we all, at this point, we just look at each other and like kind of laugh. Like, we need to get it engraved somewhere, because we just hear it constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But,
well, I'm happy for the youth today who do get the opportunity. And for all the stuff that Marianne just talked about, there's going to be links in the description. So welcome to the modern age. That way we don't have to have you say all the URLs out. Just, go down, check it out. // yeah. There's so that'll all be in the description, everybody. Check it out. If you're a youth or an adult who's interested in any of those programs, or maybe you know someone, please, just follow the links, and I'm sure it'll be wonderful. So, Marianne, thank you so much for being my guest. I've really enjoyed talking with you and getting to know you more as well, and it's always a pleasure. We've had some of your students have come to StudioME once or twice to just see, like, hey, there's another studio space in Pittsburgh, and some of them have been interested in like podcasting stuff, and it's nice to be neighbors,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and I'm glad you said that, because it's something else that we do in our semesters with our students. We always take them on field trips. And you guys have graciously hosted for us.
That's always a pleasure.
Yeah. So we do that. We also have guest speakers come. So maybe you should come.
I would love that.
We have guest speakers every semester. And then our students film those and then edit them and then post those as what we call learning labs, so that the knowledge that is being shared with the students can be shared with everybody.
Well, fantastic. Well, I would love to take you up on that.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess we'll leave it there. Okay. So, everybody, thank you so much for joining us again on the StudioMEcast. It's been a pleasure just pretending to spend this time with you, and we hope that we'll see you again next time, because we'll be here. Have a good one. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to start your own podcast, why wait? Reach out to us at StudioME.me, and I hope you hear me again soon.